Here with this week's hottest stories in the investment world, this is Zach's Friday Finish Line.
Hello and welcome to the Zach's Friday Finish Line. I am Ryan McQueenie, a content writer here at Zach's, joined as always by one of our editors, Maddie Johnson.
Hello, today is Friday, April 6th, and we're here to recap this week's biggest stories from the investment and financial world. It was another roller coaster ride on Wall Street this week, with steep declines to start the period, underscored by heightened trade war fears, making way for strong rebounds on Wednesday and Thursday.
Exactly where we go from here is still unclear, but we will be covering everything you need to know about the tit-for-tat trade sanctions playing out between the U.S. and China, including a brief discussion on why certain products are being targeted later on in the show.
But until then, let's take a look at a few other major headlines from the past few days, starting with the highly anticipated public debut of streaming music giant Spotify. Spotify.
Yeah, Spotify, trading under the ticker SPOT, S-P-O-T, made its debut, as you said, highly anticipated debut on the New York Stock Exchange on Tuesday.
But also, it's highly anticipated, hotly anticipated, but also
Yeah, kind of, well, also because it was so strange and weird, which...
Yeah.
So it was direct listing, and I think it was about a month or so ago when we got the confirmation of the details of the direct listing. We ran through some of the differences between a direct listing and a traditional IPO on the show.
I do to interrupt you one more time. I will say that Spotify's direct listing rumored for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So any IPO rumors about Spotify, it's always been will they IPO? Will they direct list? So there's always been a conversation about direct listing with IPO, but I don't think anyone ever thought they would actually do it.
Yeah, and so it's also strange because this is, a giant company, and as we'll get into here in a second, an historic IPO in terms of size, and the direct listing from what I've gathered is much more for tiny little companies that can't afford to hire underwriters and can't afford the brokerage fees and stuff, when that's probably not a problem for a company of this magnitude. So certainly strange to see. And I think a lot of people, even experienced investors, learning a couple things this week
definitely.
With this process. So the debut was on Tuesday and didn't really get actually trading until noon. Since there were no underwriters, we didn't have the set IPO price with this big fundraising event getting shopped around to all the institutional investors before open. And so what did happen though is there was a lot of market making going on early early Tuesday morning and then Monday as well before that. So basically the reference price, which I guess is the simplest way to think about it, is just think about that as the basic IPO price. If you want to compare it to what we would typically see, that was set at $132 on Monday. And then on Tuesday, when things did get cranking, the stock opened at $165.90 per share, kind of fluctuating here and there in afternoon trading, eventually closing its first day at $149 per share. That closing price valued Spotify at about $26.5 billion, ranking it as the 8th largest tech IPO after one day of trading. So yeah, like I said, we're in top 10 there in terms of tech IPOs, some really, really famous, popular names in that group, and Spotify, really a household name already with how big its service is. So strange to see such an unusual process unfold with such a big company. But it happened, and we all learned how these direct listings work. And now Spotify out there for the masses under the ticker SPOT, as I said. If you are interested, I guess, in jumping in on Spot, I just wanted to highlight a few key financials. So first up, Spotify brought in about 4.1 billion euros in 2017. That was up 39% year over year. And as we know, premium subscriptions really the foundation of their business model, accounting for about 90% of total revenues. We should note as well, though, or I would like to note that Spotify has increased its gross margin to 21% from 12% over the past 2 years. And it owes a lot of that to stronger figures on the free side of its business. So it's actually losing money on the free side of its business up until a couple of years ago, and really improved margins in that aspect. Of course, the key with the business model, the key thing to note is that it's always going to owe a massive chunk of its revenues to record labels. When you look at that top line figure, so much of that is just boom, right, cut away to for royalties to the record labels and the artists. And so when we talk about cutting costs, I guess you could think, negotiating, better royalty deals for themselves, but in reality, the controllable costs for Spotify are R&D, sales and marketing, and then there's general expenses. These are all things that are the controllable costs for all sorts of young tech companies. I'll note that all three of those categories of things were up in 2017, but I would expect Spotify management to really focus in on those three things as now that we have so many more investors and it's a publicly traded company, as that pressure to deliver value starts to increase here in the coming months. So yeah, that's Spotify. Big week for the music streaming giant. I believe a Swedish company. So
they are a
fun.
Swedish company. And I will say, because they owe a massive chunk of its revenues to record labels, it makes it a riskier investment.
Yeah,
because it's contracts, it's a contractual thing. There's a lot of royalties, a lot of sometimes angry artists, angry record labels, and those the contracts get messy. Clearly, like you have big artists like Taylor Swift and Adele and Beyonce
who just boycotted
it,
yeah.
right? So that's why there's risk involved with Spotify.
Seems like that's actually what has been the majority of the kind of public conversation about Spotify's finances over the past few years has been specifically looking at, are they even paying artists enough?
Yes.
Are artists getting a fair chunk for streaming?
But
so
now
that's always a concern.
Yeah. But now that they're a public company, I think that conversation is going to have to be shoved, if you will, to the forefront.
Definitely. Whether they like it or not. People will be having that conversation for them. So
yeah.
Good point. Definitely good point. And, if you're interested in Spot, that's something you need to keep your eye on absolutely at all times. Another thing to keep our eye on, a story that we saw unfold even more in the past few days, this kind of weird beef between Amazon and the President of the United States.
Weirdly, the word beef made me think of... I think the funniest beef, if you will, is between Wendy's and every other fast food chain.
Yes. They dropped a mixtape a couple weeks ago.
Oh my God, that was so good.
Yeah.
But also, Wendy's had the "Where's the Beef"
campaign. Back in the day.
Yeah. That really just, that word made me think of that. And the old woman, "Where's the beef?"
Yeah, of course.
Great. Anyways, yes, Donald Trump versus
Where's
President
the beef?
Donald Trump.
It's the White House and
versus
Seattle.
Amazon. So this ongoing war of words between President Donald Trump and Amazon, it escalated further in recent days. Trump on Tuesday morning tweeted negative comments about Amazon for the fourth time in 1 week, with the latest criticism including another assessment that Amazon is costing U.S. taxpayers, quote, many billions of dollars, unquote, through the United States Postal Service. Just 7 hours ago, he tweeted, "The fake news Washington Post, Amazon's quote-unquote chief lobbyist, has another of many," that's in parentheses, "phony headlines. Quote, Trump defiant as China adds trade penalties," unquote. Wrong! Exclamation point. Should read, Trump defiant as U.S. adds trade penalties will end barriers and massive IP theft. typically bad reporting.
Yeah.
Exclamation point. Yeah, so that was typical of Donald Trump to, I don't know, just the way his
Escalate
rhetoric
things on Twitter.
and he words things. It's just funny. But in recent days, Trump has claimed that the post office loses a fortune from Amazon's heavy shipping volumes, while others have argued, on the other hand, that Amazon's business has kept the USPS afloat while demand for physical mail continues to decline. And I mean, that's kind of, I don't know how much mail has, or desire for mail has declined. I mean, I know all of my bills are now online. I hate getting mail. Well, I love getting mail, like letters.
Yeah, now
like people.
now it's like a welcome surprise to get mail. That's
You're
how
like,
much
oh my God.
how much physical mail is declined.
like,
yeah, you're like, oh,
all
a throwback.
A throwback, right?
Yeah.
But like all of my bills are like e-bills. They all online. I pay all online. But like, it's like random things from like stores and like credit card offers. The only things I get in the mail now.
Yep.
But yeah.
Yeah.
But so Trump's disdain for Amazon also seems focused on the e-commerce behemoth's disruption of the traditional retail industry. So the president has remarked that Amazon's tax policy, including its practice of not collecting state taxes for most third-party sellers, threatens, quote unquote, many thousands of retailers. Amazon does, however, collect state and local taxes from some third-party sellers and on sales of products it sells directly. I know, didn't they used to not
Yes, they
do like collect taxes?
Yeah, they have
do now,
slowly
though.
added tax collection over the years. They now do collect on products that they sell directly in every state that has a sales tax.
So
they have a policy where they don't necessarily collect from third-party sellers from sales through third-party sellers. Unless there's an explicit law from that state specifically, which I think is only 7 states, and I believe 45 states have state taxes. So
he's like correct, but
also not
few years ago.
Well, he's correct in the sense that not every transaction on Amazon is taxed.
Right. Okay. So again, like not the whole picture.
Yes. Which is, I think, and you'll get into another one of the reasons why I think there's the beef going on here in a second, but it's kind of true of that too as well, where it's getting to something that is definitely correct and a fair criticism, but not the whole picture.
Yeah. So, but lying just underneath the surface of Trump's rebuke of Amazon's business model is the president's personal beef with the Seattle-based firm CEO Jeff Bezos. So the enigmatic Bezos also owns the Washington Post. You know, just what I quoted in that
Amazon
tweet,
Washington Post.
The Amazon Washington Post, just what I quoted in the fake news Washington Post. That tweet just a little bit ago. A newspaper that has been a vocal critic of the Trump administration. I know. I think it was right after the election. They changed their motto to "Democracy dies in darkness." It's been, again, a vocal critic, like I just said. The Trump administration is certainly no stranger to singling out perceived enemies and critics, and if the president can find a legal way to target Amazon for legitimate issues, it stands to reason that he would love to settle his score with Bezos. So I pulled up a stock chart of Amazon's stock, AMZN. So over the past 5 days, it has fluctuated quite a lot. Very volatile, but it's actually gained just like 1.8% in the past 5 days. But in the past month, with all like the tech sell-offs over the past 2 weeks or so, it's down about 3.23%.
Yeah. And this whole beef that we've been talking about now kind of going on for almost 2 full weeks now. So, but yeah, as we were kind of touching on all of these, so you touched on really 3 key things with the issues with the Postal Service, the issues with the taxes, and then the issue between Trump and Bezos and the Washington Post. Again, as I was kind of hinting at there, I think getting to legitimate criticisms in all of those issues, but also kind of wrong in all of those issues as well. So there's certainly 2 sides to the argument here. I have seen some reports out of the White House that have been citing sources saying that, Trump's perception of how the post office works is a little bit misguided, and he's had to be explained several times that he's incorrect on this point specifically, and especially the notion that the post office is maybe losing a fortune from the heavy shipping volumes. Because the one thing where the USPS is seeing revenue increase is the package shipments. It's been a lone bright spot. So you're talking about whether or not they're actually taking a loss on Amazon packages. I'm not exactly sure on. The taxes thing, as we mentioned, kind of true in some cases, not true in some cases. Some taxes being collected, some not being collected. And then the Bezos Washington Post thing, I mean, I guess there's probably very few people in the world that know for sure exactly how much Jeff Bezos influences the editorial direction of the Washington Post.
Sure.
I've seen some reports indicate that he's rarely, if ever, in the newsroom, and rarely, if ever, in his tenure owning the Post, said what to run or what not to run. So, again, some of these things certainly true. Some of these things maybe not 100% correct. So it'll be interesting to see. As you said, they've got to find a legitimate reason and a legal way to target Amazon if they do want to come down on the company. So exactly how that could look, I guess we'll see as we get to the bottom of what actually is going on and what the White House can do about it.
For sure.
So I don't know. Maybe he's just salty. Like, can they get Prime at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue?
Yeah, maybe they don't have Prime.
Yeah.
Free 2-day shipping.
The Amazon trucks that roam my neighborhood, I don't know if they could just sneak them past.
Maybe he
Secret
really
Service
wants
or
to
what?
try Amazon Fresh.
Yeah.
And he really wants to get Whole Foods.
And he's just
delivered.
outside of the delivery range. That's got to be what it is. Moving on here. This is a classic thing, though, where it seems like, for as personal as this gets and as motivated as Trump's support base can be to follow suit on these types of issues and boycott, could you even see like a boycott Amazon actually working, or is this just one where the fans keep scrolling on the Twitter feed and they're like, I'll let them work that out. I still need my free 2-day shipping. I'm not going to boycott Amazon.
No one could give up free 2-day shipping.
Yeah. It's just such a part of the culture.
Or like they'll be like, yeah, boycott Amazon. But then they'll be like on Amazon.
Yeah. Wait, I just
They'll
lost
like,
my
or they'll
phone
be like
charger. I need
online. They'll be like shopping online for like something, and then you'll Google something. You're like, I don't know what you Google, like white tray.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then it goes like, it brings you up to like the buy options, and then it like you click on it. There's an option for Amazon.
Oh, look, I'm there.
And
on
it's
Amazon
the
again.
cheapest option. And you're like,
And it'll come to me with free shipping in 2 days.
You're like, and it's
crazy.
Prime.
Yeah.
And you're like, and I'm a Prime member. And then I get a free Kindle book.
Now
and
my
then
boycott
I get
is
Prime
over.
Video.
And my boycott's over.
And there's a really good show on.
Yeah. The new season of Man in the High Castle is coming on soon. I can't let my boycott last too long. Yeah, no, I don't see a boycott Amazon picking up much steam so much as
Honestly, it's like
as a delete Uber where I could just get
It's a
Lyft,
snowball effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Uber or Amazon Trump beef. Moving on to more stuff coming out of the White House and Washington D.C. this week. We love our politics on the show, as we all know. The possible trade war between the U.S. and China. These fears got very real on Wednesday after Chinese regulators announced additional tariffs on 106 U.S. products, or up to $50 billion worth of American goods. The country's new 25% levy on American imports would impact soybeans, cars, whiskey, a number of other economic staples. Reading through the list, I was struck by the number of like polymers and lubricants that were on the list, very specific, because it has to be very specifically listed out. So it was a lot of very scientific chemical names and stuff that I got lost in. China's move comes less than a day after President Donald Trump, the man we've been talking about all episode, it seems like now, released a list of Chinese imports that his administration plans to target as part of a proposed crackdown on what it deems to be unfair trade practices. Sectors impacted by Trump's tariffs would include IT and communication technology, robotics, and aerospace, among many others. Apparently, all of these products and tariffs for now are still at least somewhat in the air, with ongoing negotiations looking to avert an all-out trade war. But both nations already appear ready to go tit for tat, and China's policy looks to be politically motivated in a very careful way.
Yeah, so as mentioned, China's list of U.S. imports to target includes almost no tech products or equipment, which kind of seems hard to believe. But the country is focusing almost exclusively on goods that affect Trump's support base. So this includes agricultural products, and other manufacturing supplies like chemicals, lubricants, like you said, Ryan. The list is likely political in nature and designed to create backlash against President Trump and the Republicans, especially with midterm elections looming in November.
Yeah.
Even though it feels like November with this weather.
Yeah.
It could be November.
Yeah, so if you look at soybeans, corn, certain types of wheat, specific vehicles, these manufacturing supplies. When you think about where these things are coming from, we're talking about deeply red parts of the country.
It's farm country. It's the
Trump's
Midwest.
core support base in the Midwest, in the agriculture areas and the Rust Belt and all those areas where the Republicans need that kind of foundation in this upcoming election cycle. So interesting to see China say, all right, we're going to go at you right where it hurts. And kind of the same on the flip side from the U.S. to China, saying, okay, well, you want to be the supplier to a bunch of American tech companies. You're going to bring all these like semiconductor equipment and manufacturing supplies over. Like we'll slap a nice little new tariff on that too. So hitting everybody where it hurts. I thought it was really interesting because specific types of vehicles listed. You think, oh, they're coming right for China's coming right for like Ford and GM, these iconic American brands. But to circumvent these types of issues and to create more efficiencies, Ford and GM already opened manufacturing plants in China to sell vehicles in China years ago. Mm-hmm. So the new tariffs are actually going to hurt a company like Tesla, where all of their production is happening in America. And if they want to sell to China, they will definitely get hit with this tariff if they go through. Very interesting to track that. I don't know if maybe they were intending specifically to target Tesla, or if that was just kind of how the tariff played out, if that was an unintended consequence. But yeah, I thought that was we talked about all of Tesla's headaches last week.
Companies like Tesla will get any leniency because it's like electric / good for the environment. Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, I don't know how much the Chinese regulators are going to take up the battle for environmental regulation, although they have done a much better job over the past decade or so. I guess my question there is, is that another way for the Chinese regulators to kind of protect or prop up their own kind of domestic manufacturers and people who might be trying to compete and get a leg up against Tesla in this electric car market? So we've certainly seen.
Who are Chinese electric car manufacturers?
Off the top of my head, I'm not 100% certain. Although, if you look at
'Cause that's more like Korean, like like Hyundai
yeah,
and
there's
when
obviously
Toyota.
ton of influential Japanese manufacturers as well. And getting down to that, I actually don't really know whether like a Toyota also has followed the Ford GM route and set up manufacturing facilities in China itself. But with Ford and GM specifically, we're seeing that play out in what was probably just a way to avoid shipping costs at some level is now a defense mechanism from these tariffs. And what's even more interesting is we saw the exact same thing happening with the. Do you remember a few months ago when the tariffs on washing machines were implemented? It was washing machines,
Yeah.
and it was something else that was like the first batch of these tariffs. The foreign competitors, because Whirlpool is the big washing machine, the American washing machine brand. The foreign competitors were like, we were already actually planning on coming over to build a manufacturing facility in America to get our shipping costs down to better compete with Whirlpool. Now basically just said like, get that factory built faster. So it'll be interesting to see whether that trend plays out, I guess, with this as well, which I guess gets to the root of why some people are pro-tariff is having a big Chinese company have to move some manufacturing operations to the U.S. because that's more efficient or cost-effective for them, creates jobs, creates growth in the American economy. So that would be a good thing. Although I think for the large part, we saw investors this week concerned about tit-for-tat trade war, and I think looking into past instances where this has happened has not necessarily been a healthy growth driver for a very long amount of time. And I guess getting back to something that we have been talking about is Trump's kind of personal beefs with people, with Jeff Bezos. I guess I would think some people are a little bit concerned that this is going to devolve quickly into a situation where the best interests of the economy aren't necessarily being cared for, and it's more about settling some sort of score. And Trump and the Republicans have to be worried about elections, but the Chinese doesn't necessarily have that type of playing field over there. So a lot to take in there, a lot to think about. I personally am just upset. If I'm a Chinese person, I'm probably upset about having to pay more for delicious American whiskey. That's obviously going to be really frustrating.
Fair enough.
Hitting them right where it hurts with the alcohol. That does it for us this week. Feel free to shoot us an email at podcast@zax.com. You can also check out all of our other exclusive audio content at zax.com/podcasts. Remember to subscribe and leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for joining us, and we will see you next time on the Zax Friday Finish Line.